Committee will now come to order. We'll take the items up in the order that they are presented on the agenda. We'll begin with item number 1.
Item number 1, Department of General Services report relative to a status update on the city's sweat-free procurement ordinance, ordinance number 176291.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead.
Curtis Watts, Supply Services Division, Department of General Services.
CDSC, General Services Department.
For the most part, the contract with the Workers' Rights Consortium, the organization that we've contracted with to investigate and monitor the city supply chain, has been going on for 3 years. This is the 3rd year. It'll be up for renewal in November. And they've been investigating several factories. They're currently undergoing 2 full-scale factory investigations, one for a factory in Honduras, another in Mexico. Monthly meetings with the advisory work group, and we're currently in discussions with the Sweat-Free Consortium Steering Committee, which is a national movement to combine forces with various municipalities across the country to kind of work together to eradicate sweatshops globally. And that's pretty much the status of where we are right now. We're going to be up for renewal in November 2009 with the investigation and monitoring contract.
Okay. So as far as that contract is going, this is a bit of a unique contract. How has the experience been with the contractor to date?
Excellent. Regular bi-monthly reports. They're doing a lot of outreach and informational education across the globe in various city factories, or not city factories, but factories doing work for city commodities, and also investigating in troubled areas. For instance, they're currently doing an investigation in Honduras and Mexico. 2 factories doing work on city commodities in those countries.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the difference between the Workers' Right Consortium and the Sweat-Free Consortium? Do they have some people who are involved in both, or are they completely?
Oh, they're completely separate. Workers' Rights Consortium is the organization that's contracted for the city of LA to do investigations and monitoring and on city factories doing city work for manufacturing of commodities. The Sweat-Free Consortium is kind of a collaboration between various municipalities across the country, states, cities, school districts, that are kind of considering the idea of combining forces to have greater impact in eradicating the sweatshop problem globally.
When you say combining sources, WRC would be combining forces with the Sweat-Free Consortium? Well,
no, WRC is not necessarily a part of it. These are various government municipalities. So, WRC is a nonprofit organization that does investigations.
Call them a couple cards. Yeah. We have 2 public comment cards filled out on this item. Young Soon Park and Tom Hayden.
Good afternoon. My name is Young Sun Park. I'm a staff attorney at the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, and our organization has been part of the advisory group comprised of community-based organizations and advocates who have been meeting regularly with Mr. Watts and Mr. Yazdi. I'm just here to talk a little bit about why our organization has been consistently involved with this advisory group and why we believe this is extremely powerful ordinance, and why we want more support and attention to be paid to the enforcement of this ordinance to really breathe more life into the spirit of the ordinance. In recent meetings with the independent monitor that's been contracted to the city, it's been found that there's virtually no manufacturer that's actually in compliance with the sweat-free ordinance. In that there are a host of health and safety, wage and hour violations, and violations against the right to organize. And so we think that there will be many more cases in the future where violations are investigated and uncovered, where the city has to be willing to take a firm position against those violations and alter contracts or bring those manufacturers into compliance if necessary. This is a daunting task, but I think we have an unprecedented opportunity as the leader in the country with this type of ordinance, and hope to be a leader in the enforcement of the ordinance as well. I also have comments about our involvement in the Sweat-Free Consortium. I don't know if there are any more questions, but we do strongly urge that the city participate in the national consortium of public entities that are interested.
So you're formally part of the Sweat-Free Consortium?
We are. As Mr. Watts said, it is a separate entity, but it is basically a collaborative of various state and local municipalities who are interested in pooling resources so that the monitoring that the city pays for independently, as well as the enforcement of cutting contracts if need be, happens on a broader scale, so that the manufacturers, many of whom supply various cities and states throughout the country, will be more willing to come into compliance in order to save their business.
So the Sweat-Free Consortium, your organization, Asian Pacific American Legal Center, is part of it?
We have a representative on the board of Sweat-Free Consortium that is currently still developing a final proposal for what the collaborative would finally look like.
And where are they based, the Sweat-Free Consortium?
There's an organization called Sweat-Free Communities, a nonprofit organization that has taken on some of the leadership of developing a proposal. But otherwise, the Sweat-Free Consortium isn't its own incorporated organization yet. It's at this time a loose collaborative, but the idea is to fully organize it as an organization that would be comprised of members who would be the cities and the state governments that would fund the consortium and then also draw benefits from the consortium, such as monitoring and sharing of information, so that there is a pooling of resources.
Mr. Hayden?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. This is about the fifth year in the evolution of this ordinance. The action that was taken was to pass the ordinance and then appropriate funds for a monitor, the Workers' Rights Consortium. On the positive side, if I could just summarize like an auditor, sort of it gives the City of LA, for the first time, the chance to effectively monitor city contracts for these kind of labor violations. The monitor has shown an ability to actively mediate to improve working conditions in a number of countries. There has been, perhaps for the first time, effective disclosure of factory locations. The city has actually ended its ties with one supplier, Rocky Shoes, through the vendor Galls, which we believe is the first time that a city in the U.S. has dropped a supplier based on refusal to comply with the sweat-free ordinance. And the relationship between the advocate groups and the department has been honest, good, healthy, and cooperative, all for a very minimal cost of $50,000. The reason you get that kind of low cost is, however, important to stress. the Workers' Rights Consortium, which is the monitor, has contact groups in many countries due to its working for campuses. And so there's a merging of resources, a piggybacking, if you will, that allows your $50,000 to go a long way. If I might,
Go ahead.
if I might, the other side of the picture is this. According to the monitor, the city's monitor, the contract allows them to do a couple of studies a year, and they have found on the basis of what they've looked at so far that, as Ms. Park said, there may be no suppliers to L.A. In the world who are not in violation of this ordinance. In other words, you could go all day, every country, everywhere, and find these rampant violations, which is almost too much for a city to handle. They range from discriminatory firing to things that simple human things like the lack of needle guards for workers on the machinery in many of these locations. And with the economy now collapsing, the global effects will be to drive more people into sweatshop conditions. There was one World Bank estimate this week that 100 million more people as of today are in extreme poverty than just a few weeks ago. So if I had any recommendation, it would be that more attention should be given to the council members, council offices by your oversight committee, because these are egregious violations, and to have them kept in files is insufficient. There ought to be greater public knowledge, and the oversight committee should supply council members to the extent possible with the information about what's going on in these factories that has been discovered by the city's own monitor to build a case for more resources. Secondly, the scope of the ordinance. Number one, it's limited only to garments, which means 98% of what the city buys is not under the enforcement provisions. Number two, the proprietary agencies, the DWP, the airports, the harbor, there have been efforts to draw them in, but just lack of energy or inertia have failed. There's been no expansion of the ordinance to other LA entities. And finally, it would be helpful if other cities were enlisted, but there's little energy given to enlisting them. No one is running around the country trying to pass these ordinances, which means LA's ability to have an impact is very limited to market share of almost nothing in the world economy. And there is a political and public relations power that you have that may not be exercised sufficiently, and that's why I would recommend making sure that these reports, which cover 97 factories in 16 countries, Bangladesh, Honduras, China, Cambodia, Mexico, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, be more publicly available to council offices where they might meet the interest of someone on staff or a member of the council. Thanks very much.
So what you're saying two things. You're saying one is there's a way in which we could cover more effort with a consolidated organization.
With the consortium?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Because if they go out to see one particular factory in China, and they're Chicago and Los Angeles and the county of et cetera and Dallas, if there's a bunch of municipalities that want to know the answer as to whether or not that facility, that manufacturer is producing product they're purchasing, then they're able to investigate that not on behalf of one city, but on behalf of many, which means they can go and look at many more facilities.
That would get
And
the
that's
attention of the manufacturer because of the market power of those
But
cities
that's a
combined.
secondary matter. The first matter is the fact that they can get more done if, instead of two people showing up and one guy says, hey, how you doing? You're here to see the fact, yeah, I'm here on behalf of Los Angeles. And the guy says, yeah, I'm here on behalf of Chicago. And they go about their business and go check it out. You really have one person on behalf of many entities giving one report and sending it out to all of their clients. You get what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
So that's, number one is the consolidating in that fashion. It would bring a lot more results, a lot less expensively. And then there's tertiary benefits as well. There's many more benefits to that. So this particular contract, I guess they'll be going out to bid when? During the summer or something like that? For the,
Yeah, more than likely it'll be in this summer so that we would have a new contract in place.
by November 30th? Okay. And is anybody here from WRC formally? I know there's people here who know them,
WRC is located in Washington, D.C.
but they don't have a representative here today?
Not today.
No? Okay. So we don't have any, is there anything that they've reported to you that you want to report to this committee about what they've been doing, or any update from them to you, to us?
We have several bi-monthly reports that we can submit to the council for review over the course of the contract. Some of them are highlighted in the some of their efforts are highlighted in the council report that we submitted for this meeting, but we can submit those reports to you.
And one of the black and white results is that Rocky Brands, I guess these are shoes?
Right. They were unwilling to comply with some of the suggestions or recommendations from WRC, and as a result, they were removed from the GALS contract that we currently work with the city of LA.
Okay. So what is our expectation of our contractor, present or future, in general? Is it that they have a certain amount of activity, that they look at a certain number of providers? What's our goal?
There are several deliverables.
Obviously, our goal is to root out not doing business with sweatshops.
Right.
But how do we know? I mean, we have one result where their investigation or their work for us resulted in us agreeing that we shouldn't do business with that contractor. But
the WRC really looks into the entire supply chain, well, the apparel supply chain for the city of Los Angeles, and the various contractors that we have for apparel. They have received the disclosure information for all factories globally for all of those contractors, and they've been looking into and investigating, doing outreach and monitoring for all of those factories in various countries across the globe. So really, they're looking at the entire supply chain as far as apparel goes.
now,
And, well, there are several deliverables as part of the contract. They do 2 formal, large, or major investigations as part of the contract, where they look into probably what they might determine some of the most troubled areas or the most troubled factories, and they'll do a full-blown investigation each year of the contract.
now what constitutes a sweatshop? For example, a couple of people have mentioned that workplace violations, things of that nature, but if an employer doesn't give someone a bathroom break, does that make them a sweatshop? What's the threshold?
No.
Is it 3 violations? Is it 4? Is it 10? Is it a certain number of the certain criteria of violations that makes a place a sweatshop, in which we say, like Rocky Brands, we're not doing business with you?
I'm not sure of their definition of a sweatshop, but they're really looking to eradicate any of those types of exploitative behaviors. Whether that be the one single problem at a factory, they would, do work to help eradicate that, or whether they have several violations, they would definitely be involved there to help,
Do any of you have a definition for sweatshop?
Yes,
As far as
it's in
what
the
is- what
ordinance.
It is in the ordinance.
It's in the ordinance, and it can be boiled down to a manufacturer whose employees earn less than poverty-level wages for that labor market, who are unable to enjoy collective bargaining rights, and who are systemically subjected to other forms of exploitation, discrimination, health and safety violations, that sort of thing. It's well agreed. Generally, what's strange about this discussion is about sweatshops is they're by definition illegal. There's a lot of factories that might have a violation of the law, but the factory's not illegal. A sweatshop, you can find them down the street, you can find them over the border. A sweatshop has been designed by someone to evade regulations and labor laws. That's their competitive advantage. That's how they make their money. So the idea of trying to improve conditions, send a message, is all we can do. It will take a global living wage or something before you can really get at the root of this problem.
But you mentioned something that if the employees at that particular facility are not allowed, they don't have the right to organize. Does that mean we're, according to this ordinance, that's enough to say we're going to stop doing business with them?
No.
I was going to say, because in China, I don't think they have the right to organize.
No, it has to be a collective,
But that's one of the
it's a
factors.
series of criteria.
And the right to organize is based on whatever that nation's law is. So if there's a violation at a plant in Mexico of Mexican national law protecting the right to organize, that's what the standard is, not U.S.
So
law.
it's not our standard, it's the
No.
standard where they're
of
at.
the region.
Yes.
Same thing with the wage, it's a standard where they're at, poverty level standard where they're at.
Farshid?
If I may, there is a specific definition in the ordinance on page 3, which talks about sweatshop labor. Means work performed by a person employed by a contractor or subcontractor which has habitually violated laws of any applicable jurisdiction governing wages, employee benefits, occupational health and safety, non-discrimination or freedom of association. These are the areas covered under our ordinance.
I would imagine that some of those countries don't even give them those basic rights as human beings sometimes, much less in the workplace. Freedom of association, that's something we enjoy in this country, but not necessarily around the world.
Let me just ask some of the basics. Is that, what is the funding source for the current contract?
When the ordinance was initially passed, I think we were granted one position, one dedicated staff position, and $50,000 for the contract with the investigation and monitoring contractor.
John Figaro, Department of General Services. It's all general funded program at this point.
And is the position and the funding for the RFP?
That's
Right.
And now, what is the role of the position as opposed to the RFP? How do their duties differ?
The dedicated staff position is responsible for all administrative functions in adhering to the city ordinance, which is dealing with the contractor, the setting of the RFP. He sits in, currently, it's expanded where he is dealing with he's on the Sweat-Free Consortium Steering Committee, different functions dealing with the Sweat-Free ordinance.
Okay. And then, is there an expected increase in cost if we transition from the RFP to a consortium?
More than likely. It depends. The draft proposal constantly changes. So with the initial draft proposal, it would be a little bit more than the $50,000 that we're used to paying for the current contract with WRC.
What is a little bit more?
It's based on the amount that we
I mean, how many in
that we spend. It's like $70,000, approximately $70,000 compared to the 50.
They calculate it based on the total dollar value of the amount that we purchase, apparel
They
purchase.
base it on what now?
They base the calculation on the amount that the city of Los Angeles purchase apparel on an annual basis. Or they have different kind of calculation for it, or they can base it on the population of the city. But it probably going to range between $50,000 to $70,000, which is slightly more than what we're paying right now.
Okay. But you're saying it's based, I was just saying, you base it on, we're paying a portion along with other jurisdictions?
Right.
Did I understand?
Right.
That's
Right. And you're paying based on the amount of purchases you make in a year. So if you spend $5 million on apparel, I guess 1% of that would be $50,000.
So that could escalate depending on how
The
well
level
the
of
economy's
purchasing.
doing.
Right.
Okay. Now, is the coalition already established to do these kind of investigations? Are they doing them now?
No, it's still in the draft stages. It's still a work in progress.
You're talking about the
Councilmember,
Sweat-Free Consortium.
If I may add, again, the draft has undergone several revisions, continue to be revised, but a copy of it has been reviewed by the city attorney's office, and their initial feedback was it's not in the city's best interest to move forward with the consortium and continue to contract with the existing contract.
Because I was wondering, would that put us in a position, if we went in that direction, that we'd be doing sole source instead of an RFP?
No, not necessarily. There are other entities out there that can do this work.
Okay, I mean, so if we went out for an RFP again, then anyone, including the consortium, could apply for the RFP?
Sure, that's correct.
So, and the things that, my sense is, there are things that have been accomplished by the vendor that we are currently employing, but it appears there's other things we'd like them to do in a broader sense. Is that accurate?
If I may, the consortium itself cannot provide monitoring and enforcement services. There is a reason for that, because the consortium will include all other governmental entities. And the monitoring services need to be provided by a body who is independent from the government. So they need to contract out those services to one independent monitoring organization similar to WRC or other organizations.
So they would be doing the
Coordination.
They would be doing the RFP, or the city would still be doing the RFP?
Most probably consortium gonna get into the contract with independent monitor, and that independent monitor, which has a contract with consortium, will provide those type of services to all consortium members.
Okay. So then our role would then get into what? Paying a fee to be a part of it?
To the consortium.
Right.
That's
And
correct.
then they would then go to whatever process they have to then get a monitor?
That's correct.
Right.
Okay. It may or may not be the monitor that we currently are doing business with.
That's right.
That's correct.
Okay. So we'd be out of the RFP business if we went in this direction.
For investigation and monitoring, yes, we wouldn't have to do an RFP if we were to sign on the consortium.
But by the same token, then the contract, the resulting contract may not be in the city's best interest and may tackle different tasks that would not be what would be in our best interest.
Okay. So you, what do you, well, I'm unclear. What are we asking today? Is that
And I'm
we-
sorry, that's the opinion of the city attorney. That's their initial opinion. We really need to get feedback from them.
Okay. But the issue we're dealing with today, are we saying we want the committee to support that we go in the direction of the consortium and pay a fee? Or are we saying that our mission is to recreate another RFP before November 2009 and submit it and continue doing what we're doing?
At this point, Councilmember, our recommendation is to continue to move forward with the existing contractor. Our purpose here today is to provide you with the status of what has taken place, and our recommendation is for us to come back to you in 6 months when we have some more information and then provide you with a recommendation.
Would that information be a more extensive, possibly be a more extensive RFP?
It could very well be, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Tom?
Well, maybe it's apples and oranges. I think we're clear, though. I mean, there's a monitor that goes out and investigates contracts, and then they recommend. So the city has to have one position somewhere that then decides to deal with the recommendation or not. That's all that's going on now. Should it be enlarged, if possible, because it only allows for a few investigations a year? The consortium, I don't know why it's not in the city's best interests, because it's an imaginary concept at the moment. Anyway, it's just
That's what I think the city attorney is at right now. I'm gathering that until the consortium solidifies.
Exactly.
Then they could give a stronger opinion about
Exactly.
the structure and whether or not it applies to what we want to do here.
Right. I just didn't want to draw a negative response to the consortium, which doesn't exist, when the only thing that does exist is
WRC.
this staff that's working with the monitor and doing a good job. Whether it could be enlarged is up to yourselves. Everybody is going through budget cuts. But mainly, I think that these cases are pretty shocking and shouldn't just be buried in files. They should be sent out to members of the council, the interested public, the media in the building, because these reports are quite extraordinary about in the detail they go into. And taxpayers have a right to know what kind of factories are producing the stuff that we buy.
So as of right now, what you're telling this committee is, you think that, for example, what happened with Rocky Brands, the fact that they got eliminated from doing business with the city, that that should be something that would be not only an exercise, but something that's important for people to understand as a real life example about who we're doing business with and how we should have a standard in the city. And we
Yes,
should-
yes, to know about it and to know that the city did something about it. I would think somebody would
Okay.
claim credit for that, and people would applaud and say that's good step.
All right.
I think what Mr. Hayden is proposing is a great idea, and one of the things we can do is post the findings of workers' rights on the supply services website that's available to our vendors, and that most certainly can.
Yeah,
We'd be happy to explore that possibility.
Good, good.
I don't see anything that would prevent us from doing that.
Absolutely. I think by now it's all public information by right, at least in this country. I don't know about other countries, at least in Los Angeles. But so what we're going to do, is anybody else here for public comment on item number 1? We brought up the 2 public comment cards. Okay. Public comment is closed on item number 1. What we're going to do in this committee is we're going to instruct the staff to prepare a report specifically on the Rocky Brands situation, and to bring us up to speed on how it came about that we determined that we are not going to do business with them, and we canceled our dealings with them. In addition to that, report to this committee on how we could have real-time information as we solidify these decisions in the future, that they be posted and available to the public. And once we go through that report about the Rocky Brands, then we'll take it to the council so that the rest of the council members can see that this is a real effort. And then that way, by that time, is 60 days, would that suffice to get the Rocky Brands report to this committee?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. And then, and also the, some recommendations about how you would go ahead and follow through with postings in the future. Okay, so 60 days to do that. And in addition to that, before preparing the in the process of preparing the RFP, before going out to RFP next time, that you report to this committee on that process as you prepare to go out, prior to going out to the RFP process, formally out to the public, so that people can bid. Anything else? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
And so with that, we'll note and file this particular GST report with those recommendations to the staff. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Requests, I mean, not recommendations. Yes, item 2.
Item number 2, CLA report relative to certain proposed agreements with Old Church LLC in connection with the Motor Transport Division / Main Street Parking and Police Administration Building projects and related matters. This item is also potential for closed session under
you know
Government
what?
Section 549, 56.9A.
We'll hold this item to go to public comment on this item before we go into closed session at the end of this meeting. Item 3.
Item number 3, motion, Weezer Cardenas, relative to authorization of fund transfers in connection with repairing earthquake-related damage sustained by the city-owned Chicago building located at 2130 East First Street.
Anybody here from GSD? Anybody here from Council District 14? No? Okay, so this is a building that we purchased, and it's occupied by Council District 14 and some other tenants, or will be.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Parks. John Chavez with the CAO. We purchased this building a couple of years ago. It's supposed to be the CD14 neighborhood city hall. Even when we purchased it, it had significant seismic issues that had to be repaired. It also had a bunch of non-permitted work that had to be done. Then the Chino Hills earthquake hit, made the situation even worse. So we already have money authorized to make these repairs. We're merely asking, as a result of BOE and General Services stating that this is a potentially serious situation in the event of an earthquake, the eastern part of the building could fall down on the street, and then we'd have some major problems if that happens. So we'd like to appropriate, the motion is to appropriate money, $2.5 million to General Services accounts so they can undertake this repair work.
Okay. And part of it would be coming from the Capital Expenditure Improvement Fund?
That's correct, and the balance from MICLA.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Chairman of the Budget Committee?
Let me just ask, the MICLA money's already been left, it's already been authorized?
Yes, that's
You're not
correct.
issuing new bonds?
No.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody here to make comment on item number 3? Seeing and hearing none, public comment on item number 3 is now closed. With that, it'll be, the motion is to approve the motion. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Item number 4.
Item number 4, GSD report relative to authorization to negotiate and execute a new lease with Tom Gilmore and Associates, LLC, and Pharmaca Art Gallery at 264 South Main Street for an art gallery and cultural space.
Anybody here?
Good afternoon, Lourdes Owen from Asset Management. This is a request for authority to negotiate and execute a new lease with Tom Gilmer and Associate and Pharmaca Art Gallery for an art gallery in cultural space at the new to be constructed, or the construction will be completed in May 2009 of the Main Street Parking and Motor Transport Division. The lease will be for $1 a year.
No, it's
$1
a square foot.
a square foot
So
per
you
month.
almost got the chairman.
I'm giving you a,
Going
I'm giving you a heart
Yeah, we're
attack
going to
here.
stop that stuff. Yeah.
$1 a square foot per month for a total of $2,400.
Monthly.
And the tenant will be responsible for all utility costs.
Okay. And also that additional HVAC maintenance monthly fee
Correct.
to the tenant. Now this, $1 a square foot, I know the market's different today than it was over the last few years, but how does that compare to the assessed market value?
We had a lot of community outreach in sending out the RFP, and only Gilmore and Associates and Pharmaca sent in a response. And so it may be lower than market, but that is the amount that we have received.
Now, the 2 5-year extensions in the contract, if the market were to improve dramatically, do we have the opportunity at that point in time to not grant those extensions and then renegotiate with the tenant?
The option will be, the 2-year options will be at the discretion of the city, subject to a review of the market rate, and then they'll be paying whatever is the prevailing market rate at the
So
time.
for the first 5 years, this is the only bidder, the only taker, so it appears, and so this is the rate that they're going to be paying. But what you're saying is, in order for those extensions to take place, the first or the second one, at that time, they will be presented with the current market rate at that time.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions?
I was just wondering on the rate, how we calculate, because on item 6, which is the downtown building, it's $1.75 more per square foot. I'm just wondering, how do we have that kind of differential when we're only probably a quarter mile away from?
That's an office building at 201 North Figueroa Street,
Mhm.
which is more on the
Higher rent?
the higher end, the government center, versus this one on Main Street, which is away from Civic Center. It's 2 blocks from Civic Center. However, there's really no art gallery use. There is art gallery use. However, there is no, it's difficult to sustain during this economic time.
I got to ask this question. Are there more homeless by the 256 South Main Street versus the Fig Plaza? I mean, the Fig Plaza Tower?
Are there,
There tend to be more homeless issues in and around the Main Street site
Correct.
versus
No.
the Fig Tower site?
I don't see, there will be homeless issue around the motor transport division site on Main Street compared to Figueroa Tower.
Let me ask you, what do we pay in rent in the close proximity if we have a city facility? I think we rent over, Bradbury over in that area, and also, First and Los Angeles Street, the bank building. What are some of the rents there?
I really don't know, but I'm guesstimating that it's around the $1.75 to $2.25 mark. However, we've been there for many years, so the options have been renewed, and we were subject to the existing terms of the lease.
I just think it's low. I was surprised when I looked at it. It's $1 per square foot.
Reginald Jones Sawyer, General Services. Councilman, part of the feeling, because the councilwoman of the district really, really wanted to have an art gallery type of operation there. And we wanted to make sure, the city wanted to make sure that it would be successful. And so the rents is a little bit lower, but they are putting in their own tenant improvements. I think you'll see some other things coming through where we're putting up some kind of concessions for rental improvements. There's no cash outlay coming from the city, but this is really to continue. Along 2nd Street, there's a lot of art galleries. And as I think my colleague had mentioned earlier, the economic conditions right now are really hard, even for striving businesses that have a lot of customer base. Right now, arts are struggling, and so this gives it an opportunity for the first 5 years to make to stay thriving and to continue. After about 5 years, we'll have an opportunity to reevaluate, and if then hopefully the market turns around, and we'll all be able to enjoy whatever profits that they undertake after that.
And this building is currently vacant?
It's under construction.
So this is the motor transport.
Good, okay, well, thank you.
And also, even the interesting thing about any appraisal, you'll notice in the language of an appraisal, it says, it refers to what the market will bear. And what's sad is, we didn't get competing offers.
No, we did not.
Went out to the public, only one came back, right?
Correct.
So, technically speaking, if you want to use that language in the strictest, this is the only offer that the market was willing to meet us at? And then secondly, what if we would have got no offers? Does that mean the value is zero? Because no offers mean that there is no market. Therefore, if there's no market, how do you put a value on it? But I appreciate you, Reggie, coming forward and explaining some of the nuances that it's not necessarily that space was put out to market for highest and best use. The space was put out, who would like to put an art gallery here? And if
Correct.
you are, what are you willing to pay? So that's what makes it a little bit awkward as well. We restricted them by saying not everybody who wants to rent in that area, not a restaurant, not a retail store, but an art gallery.
Correct.
And that being the case, we limited ourselves to who were the takers, and so much so that we only got one.
Correct.
Is this particular developer, do they have any other dealings with the city right now? Are they current, if they do?
Tom Gilmore has had a lot of dealings with a lot of different projects in the city. We're hoping that he has some more coming up before this body. But
is he current?
Is he current in, as far as I know, he's current in any of the projects that he's working on now. I don't know of any.
Something came to mind right now, and what I don't like is I don't like when, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, I just want to cover everybody. I don't like it when bureaucrats decide to treat certain developers differently than others. When I'm inquiring about a particular developer and all of a sudden staff at the city is willing to badmouth that developer and say, well, you see, he or she's got other dealings with the city and they're 1 month behind on this one payment on this obscure loan on this one property they've had with us for 12 years. And all of a sudden I said, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? We're talking about this other project. And they say, no, well, see, we have this new rule for the housing department or CRA or what have you, that if they're delinquent anywhere in the city, they're like on our blacklist until they get straightened out. So that being the case, they caused me to ask you that question. Before this comes to council, what I would want from GSD is to find out if, in fact, this particular developer who wants to sign a lease with us, if this developer is delinquent on any of their dealings with the city at this time. I want a snapshot of this developer's dealings with the city. I have nothing against them. I think I've met this guy actually, but I'm sorry. I got to start asking that question every time I see a name that might have other dealings with the city. Because all I want is equality and fairness, not favoritism or saying, well, she's a nice woman or he's a nice guy, so we won't ask those questions about them.
Okay.
Okay, so before this comes to council, I want GSD to find out from whatever other departments are dealing with, say, hey, we got a little lease over here, and one of the council members asked, does this guy have any dealings with housing, with CRA, or what have you? Is this person current? Because according to what other departments have told me, if they're not, then we don't show favor. We don't add new contracts with them in any department. That's what I was told by CRA and by housing, both. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. With that requirement of staff, the motion is to approve the GSD report on item 4. Okay. Item 5.
Item number 5, motion, Weston Labange, relative to a proposed amendment to agreement number C-103762 with the Korean American Federation of Los Angeles in connection with the lease of city-owned property at 965, 975 South Normandy Avenue, and 954 South Arroyo Street for constructing, equipping, maintaining, and operating a full-service, multi-purpose community and senior citizens center in Koreatown.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a request to amend an existing lease with the Korean American Federation to include a co-tenant, the Koreatown Community and Senior Citizen Center, and also change some of the terms of the lease to put a cap or a termination date should an activity or the construction not commence or be completed after a certain time frame. One example is they have to build within 6 years. Construction should commence within 6 years of the execution date of the lease, and that 8 years from the date of execution, the construction of the senior citizen center and parking facility should also be in place. Otherwise, the city has the option to terminate the lease.
Any questions? Okay. All right. Is there anybody here to make public comment on item number 5? Seeing and hearing none, public comment on item number 5 is now closed. With that, the motion approved that item, and that item is approved. Thank you. Number 6, item number 6.
Item number 6, GSD report relative to authorization to negotiate and execute new leases with the Community Redevelopment Agency and Los Angeles Department of Water and Power for space at Figaro Plaza, 201 North Figueroa Street.
Chuck Rubin, Department of General Services. The CRA has already been at the construction one-stop on the 4th floor of the 201 tower. They're being relocated to a different location to make room for DWP counter so that customers don't have to go up to the DWP building and back to make a payment. These are very small spaces, 120 square feet for CRA and 200 feet for Department of Water and Power. Building and Safety has requested that they, who formerly were paying operating expense and debt service on that portion of the space, be relieved from that payment, and therefore we're asking CRA and DWP to pick up that expense. I'd like to offer a technical correction to make this effective, that the rent be effective February 1st, 2009.
Okay. Any questions?
We just asked, just as a general question about that building, where are we on the rentals and tenancy factors, and have we made any additional movement of city services as we displace private corporations in that building?
Well, we're pleased to tell you that the Department of Recreation and Parks is starting their move into Fig Plaza from their leased space at Garland this coming weekend. It's a 3-phase move that will fill that space on March 31st. That will be complete. The city will save about $1.3 million a year in lease costs from that move alone. Sorry?
1.3?
1.3 million. The rest of the building is still full. We have 2 large non-city tenants. One is the County of Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. They have about 87,000 square feet, and their lease is up in 2013. They have no options to renew. We are trying to work with the county on ascertaining whether they intend to move out. We would have plans for that space. We do have the Department of Housing at the Garland building, and they are slated to backfill that space as soon as that's available. Then Housing would be able to take on some of the debt service expense and operating expenses. The other major chunk of space is currently occupied by a large law firm, private law firm. They have 140,000 square feet. Their lease is up in 2012. They have 2 5-year options to renew, which would take them out through 2022. We anticipate at this time that they will stay, but given the current economic conditions of buildings elsewhere and their knowledge that at the end of those 2 options to renew, the city will likely not renew their lease again, we would not be surprised if they were to contemplate other locations for a long-term future, and to take advantage of the economics of the situations out there right now. That being said, if they were to leave in 2012, the Department of Community Development has a lease termination right in 5 years, in 2014 beginning, to terminate if that law firm should leave. And so that timing would work to put CDD in there. At that time, the buildings would be primarily city-filled. There would be some additional space that we can look at for some other departments. We do intend to move the Department of Aging off of Wilshire Boulevard in there. We are about to submit a strategic plan which will make Figaro Plaza into construction services, industry support, and if approved, to make social service agencies be the other anchor tenant from the city.
No, you said on Garland, we have, that would remove about 1.3 from our lease account.
Correct, and that's general funded.
But that, we'd only get about half of that this year because they won't move in until
No, they're moving now.
now.
So in 09-10, that goes away completely.
The whole next fiscal year, we get the full year.
Correct, it's all savings for next year.
Thank you.
We thought that the state of California, who was in Fig Plaza, was going to be delayed in getting out. And so we did anticipate that we might stay at Garland longer, but we were able to convince them to get out sooner than later and get Rec and Parks moved as quickly as possible.
We got them out just in time. They stopped making rent payments anyway.
In fact, I was reading an article this weekend that was saying that after we go through all of this bank subsidies and the major auto industry, that because of the over-leveraging of commercial buildings, that is potentially the next collapse as relates to our financial structure. And so they're really beginning to evaluate in the sense of some of these major buildings because of loss of tenants and a variety of things.
Absolutely.
Be the next
Right.
wave of financial impact on the city.
I think that's what the law firm is looking at right now in weighing their options of staying or going, and their timing might be advantageous.
Thank you.
Fortunately, we're in a position that we're okay no matter what they decide to do.
Oh, that's good.
So it's good.
Because, I mean, we've with Fig Plaza and what do we call it on the Public Works building?
Mhm.
We've saved significant millions of dollars.
Correct.
Of city lease dollars.
Correct. The Public Works building saved us about, I think it's close to $7 million a year in lease costs from leases that we had on Spring Street and parking, and they've been very advantageous, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any public comment on item number 6? Or on item number 6? Seeing and hearing no public comment on item number 6. Public comment is now closed on 6. I mean, I joke about the state not paying, but it's a little embarrassing. I was joking with my landlord in my field office because downstairs he has a state assembly office. And I joked with him and I said, well, at least you're getting paid by us. And he very seriously looked at me and says, no, I'm not. So I thought he was joking, but he was serious. I don't understand why the city of Los Angeles wouldn't pay their bills on rentals, especially when the councilman's sitting there kind of embarrassed because he's trying to make a joke and then realize the joke is on him. Okay.
The check's in the mail.
It's still not.
Didn't say what mail.
Or where it went. All right. So with that, we have a motion to approve the item according to the GSD report, and item's approved. Now, item number
Request
7.
with the technical correction, please.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. With the technical correction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. As amended.
Item number 7, GSD report relative to a proposed month-to-month rental agreement for a residential property at 153 Depot Street and all other city-owned residential properties along Potrero Canyon Rim.
Good afternoon. This is a request for authority to approve a month-to-month lease longer than 4 months for a property at 15329 DePaul Street in Pacific Palisades. The city GST maintains 12 residential properties in the area, and they're slated for the next 5 years to be sold at public auction as soon as the Bureau of Engineering Geotechnical Group obtains a release from the Coastal Commission. We will be receiving $4,400 per month, and which will total or add to the over $650,000 that we received from monthly rents on the properties. 20% of the gross receipts will go to the residential property maintenance fund, and the balance of 80% goes to the general fund.
Okay, good. Well, I hope BOE takes their time on this one, because right now it looks like the rents are a lot stronger than the for sale market. So hopefully we'll be in a different market when we put these things out for sale. Any questions?
Just give me the breakdown on where the funds go.
20% goes to the 553 account, or the residential property maintenance fund created by an ordinance. And
Which fund is it? Is that the one for the upgrade of the whole area?
correct, the upgrade of the residential property. And then the balance of,
Is it site specific to this area?
correct, site specific to the house.
But the handful of homes that we bought in that neighborhood, right? Didn't we buy like 4 or 5 of them or something like that?
No, we bought at one time 22,
Wow, 20.
22 houses and lots.
So that fund is specific to those groups of residences.
Correct, yes.
So 20% for the site-specific repair. And what was the other?
And the balance of the 80% goes to the general fund.
Thank you.
Another question? Okay. We're on item number 7. Public comment is open on item number 7. Seeing and hearing none, public comment on item number 7 is now closed. With that, the motion is to approve the GSD report. That item is approved. Number 8.
Item 8, motion, Rosendahl Cardenas, relative to the transfer of jurisdiction of the city-owned parcel located at 3503 Via Dulce, APN 4225-013-901, to the Department of Recreation and Parks and associated fund transfers.
Go ahead.
Joel Alvarez, Recreation and Parks, and I'm just here today to extend our approval and support for this transfer of jurisdiction, and we look forward to working with all agencies to convert this property into usable parkland.
Okay. Okay. Seeing no questions from the committee, public comment is open on item number 8. Item number 8 has public comment open. Seeing and hearing no one coming forward for public comment. Public comment is closed on item number 8. There's a motion to approve the item. The item is approved. Item number 9.
Thank you.
Item number 9, motion, Smith Cardenas, relative to the feasibility of permitting mid-sized and smaller city departments to consolidate the purchasing of promotional products under larger departments' purchasing programs, or to piggyback on their existing contracts and related matters.
John Figaro with General Services. The Department of General Services is the purchasing agent for the City of Los Angeles, and as such, all of the council control departments have the ability to use any of the citywide contracts that are established. In addition, we draft our one-time purchase orders with additional quantity clauses, so if there's a particular item that a city department wishes to procure that doesn't have access to, or doesn't have an existing order, they have access to these purchase orders to go ahead and procure these promotional items. I do want to say that quite some time ago, we did have a contract established with a company for promotional items, and it was underutilized, and as such, we did not renew it. Not to say that we cannot establish another one, but a department just simply needs to submit a requisition to the procurement analyst and request a new contract.
So basically, the ability for the city departments to piggyback on other contracts does exist.
Well, let me be clear. With regards to council-controlled departments, the term piggyback is irrelevant. The contracts are written in such a way that all city departments, all city council-controlled departments have the ability to use these contracts. The piggybacking would come into place if a proprietary department wanted to use one of our existing contracts, which we have the ability and we do share with information with our proprietary brothers on a daily basis. So they have the ability to piggyback on one of our contracts without any problems.
Okay. And that does happen?
Yes, it does.
It's an ongoing?
Yes.
And when it comes to environmentally friendly materials, what are we doing as of late to try to take advantage of those opportunities?
Well, we have a ordinance that is currently being reviewed by the city attorney's office. We're working very closely with Councilman Smith's office. We're hope to have the ordinance finalized in the next several weeks, and I believe it's the city attorney's plan to present that to City Council as instructed by Council several months ago.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
Let me ask Mr. Burns, is there was something that Mr. Smith was getting after? Or
Good afternoon, council members. Nicole Burnson for Councilmember Smith. The idea behind the motion was not so much the piggybacking of council control departments with each other, but I think we've all seen at the events that we have in our communities that various departments come with promotional items, and the idea was to encourage the purchase of more environmentally friendly options, which are not, sometimes they're cost prohibitive. So the idea was to basically combine contracts for promotional items to give smaller departments the opportunity to purchase more environmental options at the same or similar cost.
I mean, and if I heard him correctly, he says we can do that now.
We were actually told when we introduced the motion by Deborah Ramos that there was some prohibition about contracts. And I'm not quite clear. We tried to have a conversation earlier in the meeting, and I wasn't quite clear what the problem was that wasn't there before.
Deborah Ramos, General Services. And I apologize because I wasn't even aware that this motion was moving forward. But currently, the way that our contracts are set up with regard to promotional items are whenever a department has a need for promotional, whether it's for an environmentally preferred program that they're promoting or for any type of program they're promoting, they have two options. One is to generate a requisition for a one-time PO if it's over $1,000. If it's under $1,000, we delegate out purchases under $1,000 using an authority called a blanket authority. That gives them the right to, or gives them, I guess, permission to basically go anywhere they want and procure these items. What we were talking about before is we don't have really the control over where they go. They may go to, say ConAd's database and look for a minority vendor and promote or contract with that minority vendor. They may look for a small vendor. They may look for somebody that they've picked up a promotional item from at another vendor fair or something, and they use that. So those delegated purchases is where we don't really have control over where they're purchasing from. As John mentioned, in the past, we've tried to establish promotional contracts where, we're trying to leverage that group or the group buys, and departments tended not to use those contracts. And I'm not sure if it was just a sign of the times and promotional items were not being purchased or what. We're really not sure. As John mentioned, we are more than able to award or to go out to bid and award a contract for promotional items. We could specify that they all be environmentally preferred products, but that still doesn't get the usage, it doesn't guarantee a usage against that contract. So I'm not really sure which part of what we were discussing was misinterpreted, but we do have the ability to award the contract, and like I said, if that's the direction we want to move in, we can do it. what might also help is a direction from the council to departments that whenever you are buying promotional items, that you use the established contract and that you don't, try to find another vendor that sells something that isn't, just as an example, we were brought a sample of a pen that was a corn-based biodegradable pen. When we went out and surveyed a number of vendors to find out how much that promotional pen would be, we came back with a price of $1 something. If you go to pick up a catalog from any one of these promotional vendors, I know I get them all the time, they're sending them to my office. You look for pens, they may cost you 10 cents, they may cost you 20 cents, they may cost you 30 cents. So as a end user, you're trying to spend your money as best, get the most for your money. It's not really, they're not looking at it as an advantage to buy that biodegradable pen where I can only get 10 of them for $1.20 each, whereas I can get 100 of them, for 10 cents each or something like that.
Yeah, I was told that biodegradable pen was $2.
$2, okay. So, that's what we're faced against. Now, if there's an instruction from the council that says any promotional item has to be environmentally preferred, then that kind of eliminates those purchases of, the quick and easy, cheap thing that, somebody might go out and buy under a blanket authority. So that would be the difference there.
Yeah, but when you look at the language, it talks about encouraging the purchase of promotional products derived from environmentally friendly materials.
And if I may,
They require-
Councilmember,
yeah.
when we've been working on the environmentally preferred purchasing policy, as you know, in the Renew LA Committee for some time now, and this motion actually came out before a lot of the work came out on that ordinance. Part of that ordinance involves outreach on the EPP by GSD, and I think some of these issues could be covered under the same program.
Agreed.
Right, I agree.
Also, one of the things that the EPP stresses is the importance of local environmentally preferred purchasing. So that's something that we would like to see highlighted as a result of this.
So that's LEPP?
It's EPP, excuse me. Oh, yes, LEPP, that's correct.
Okay. So a little bit better understanding of what the motion is expecting of GSD and
We, like I said, we can definitely work on putting together something that would meet the guidelines that are being established through the ordinance, and again, working to promote that with all the user departments. And again, hope that they use the contract. Because most of the contracts that we're awarding, we put them out there, and it's up to the departments to use them. We don't have that enforcement ability. To say you're going to buy from this vendor just because, or you're going to buy the biodegradable pen. But by encouraging and working through the ordinance, hopefully we can get a little bit closer to that.
Let me just, so I'm not confused. So what we're trying to do is get the phrase encouraging to use the environmentally sensitive materials is what we're after in the ordinance where it doesn't exist now?
No, that would be covered by the EPP ordinance itself. What this motion really hoped to do was to harness the purchasing power of the City of Los Angeles, similar to the way that happened after the Buy Recycled ordinance was passed, which where you saw recycled paper was much more expensive than just regular virgin content paper. Now you can see that they've levelized. So basically taking the purchasing power of a City of Los Angeles to say, okay, that pen is $2 now, but if we all buy that pen, how much is that pen?
And I think to some extent we've already seen that, because we actually, we added that pen to our current office products contract, and I believe that they did sell it to us for a discount. And I apologize, I don't remember the dollar, I want to say it was $1.70.
Was that cause and effect on that particular item?
Correct.
Now, was it down to 10 cents? I guarantee
No.
it was not.
I believe it was I want to say it was $1.39.
I'm being told it was 170, between
170.
170 and 180.
Okay, but the bottom line is there was that cause and effect where by greater volume purchase, they brought the price down. But at the same time, if it's the goal of the city to be more environmentally responsible, I don't want to say conscious, because with that is the responsibility of saying, yeah, I can afford to buy a $2 pen or I can afford to buy a 10-cent pen. but what is the cause and effect when it comes to the environment?
Right.
What footprint of mitigants? All right. So that's an example of what we're trying to encourage here, is the reduction in price, yet at the same time, not like for like, but being able to have more environmentally friendly products purchased by the city. Anything else? Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
With
you.
that,
Thank you.
Anybody here for public comment? Seeing and hearing none, we're on item number 9. There's nobody here for public comment on item number 9. Public comment on item number 9 is now closed. With that, there's a motion to approve the item. This item is approved. We now go back to our last item on the agenda, which is item number 2. Is there anybody here for public comment on item number 2 before we go into closed session? We're on item number 2. Is anybody here on item number 2 for public comment? Public comment, I'm sorry, read the item? Oh, you read it earlier.
I can read it again if
Okay,
you want.
read it again, yeah.
CLA report relative to certain proposed agreements with Old Church LLC in connection with the Motor Transport Division / Main Street Parking and Police Administration Building Projects and related matters.
Okay. We're on item number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anybody here from the public to speak on item number 2? Public comment is open on item number 2. With that, public comment on item number 2 is now closed. We will now go into closed session on this item. Sergeant? Okay, we're now back into open session. We're on item number 2 on the agenda. So I'm going to ask the staff to prepare answers to the questions about what were the elements that contributed to the justification of the grant easement and agreement amount, as there are several elements that seem to contribute to that. And at this time, the chairman moves approval of the CLA report and recommendations, and that will go forward on a 1-to-1 vote for and against approval of the CLA report and recommendations. And being that this has a placeholder on the council for tomorrow, Wednesday, the 18th.
That is correct.
The staff needs to be prepared to answer questions not only for Councilmember Parks on those specifics of what elements contributed to that agreement amount, but also be prepared to answer questions for other council members should they choose to want to know those details. Some of those answers may have to be done in closed session. That'll be determined at the time by the city attorney and city council on the 18th of February. Any other questions? Okay. So be prepared to delineate how you arrived at the amount and how much of that is resulted in that amount from what contributing factors?
Mr. Chair, for the public record, who is the yes vote and who is the no vote?
Cardenas, yes. Parks, no. Okay. So with that, that concludes the items on the agenda, and we're now open for general public comment. Is there anybody here for general public comment? Seeing and hearing none, general public comment is now closed. This committee is now adjourned.